The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. With the news at this time, I am Tiana Jordan. A very good morning to you. First, the lead stories. The President and the leader of the People's National Congress Reform are identifying conditions for power sharing. The Region 4 chairman is being investigated for a gun-related incident. In regional news, the United States wants to know what is Venezuela's position on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And for the international news, we'll bring to you the latest bulletin from the BBC World Service. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in a moment.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now the news in detail. President Irfan Ali appears to be hinging any chance of power sharing to the opposition, agreeing to free and fair elections. This is just days after the People's National Congress Reform (PNCR) leader Aubrey Norton pegged it to a clean voters list. This is against the background of a United States Agency for International Development USAID-funded report recommending that Guyana should move towards power sharing in order to manage the country's oil wealth efficiently. Dr. Ali recalls that the international community had also cited the need for democracy.
The same entire international community spoke about the attempts to rig an election, spoke about the attempt to steal democracy from the people of this country. Let's fix that first. Let us fix that. Let us rid ourselves of these monsters in society who would want to take away our democracy, the rule of law, and rig elections. The days for those are gone. And we must fix that. Let's start from there. Let's start fixing that.
The president's position follows last week's pronouncement by PNCR leader Aubrey Norton. He has singled out the need for an acceptable voters list as a condition for negotiating power sharing.
For instance, I do not see us getting into any serious dialogue if we cannot agree on a new voters list, a clean voters list. The basis of democratic elections is a clean voters list. And so even if you're going to share government after, if you don't have a clean list and an election that is considered credible, then you will still have problems. So there are a number of issues we have to deal with.
The PNCR-led Coalition of a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU plus AFC, and the governing People's Progressive Party Civic, PPPC, continue to accuse each other of rigging the March 2020 general elections. The international community, including Western nations, Caribbean and extra-regional observer missions, and had cited manipulation of results for Region 4 in favor of APNU plus AFC. Several now former GCOM and PNCR officials are before the court on charges of electoral fraud. The PNCR leader said his party welcomed the views in the USAID report. President Irfan Ali on Sunday announced that he plans to meet with marijuana farmers to encourage them to get into the cultivation of high-value hemp. He says marijuana farmers can earn much more from hemp and reduce social problems associated with marijuana use.
I intend to have a meeting very soon with all the marijuana growers in this country. I intend to have a meeting and to let them understand that there is a viable future in the hemp industry and bring them into that discussion and move away from the marijuana that has social consequences and come into mainstream economic activity that does not have that impact, that will give them more returns. And by the way, they already have the experience in growing.
The Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, KANU, last year seized almost 2 million kilograms of marijuana and destroyed at least 10 acres of marijuana cultivations. Marijuana growers are not organized under the umbrella of an association, unlike St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Several Caribbean islands have started to produce medicinal marijuana for export to North America and Europe. The Guyana government is this year expected to table legislation to govern the hemp industry and eventually put measures in place to ensure that farmers do not mask hemp production with marijuana. Home Affairs Minister Robeson Ben had said during the 2020 national budget debate that a number of retrenched sugar workers had shifted to marijuana as a means of eking out a living. The chairman of Region 4, Demerara Mahaica, Daniel Siram, and his father-in-law are under investigation over allegations that they threatened each other with their licensed firearms. Head of the Guyana Police Force Criminal Investigations Department, Wendell Blanham, confirms that a probe is underway. He says that Mr. Siram's licensed handgun has been seized pending investigations. Other police sources say that the businessman, Shahid Hamid of Prashad Nagar, reported that Mr. Siram approached him and they had an argument. Mr. Hamid is alleging that Mr. Siram drew a handgun, cranked it, and threatened to kill him. Mr. Siram, according to police sources, made a similar report to police. He and his father-in-law were subsequently arrested and their firearms and ammunition seized. They have been released on self-bail and ordered to return to court. Two women are in custody after one of them was allegedly caught with several cocaine-laced mats in her possession at the Eugene F. Correa Ogle International Airport. The Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, KANU, says 22-year-old Akata Makiba Garnett of Seafield Sophia had in her possession 5 cocaine-laced mats. KANU estimates that the cocaine amounts to more than 5 kilograms and is worth $5.6 million Guyana dollars. Ms. Garnett was due to leave for Barbados when she was arrested after a secondary search unearthed the narcotics. KANU says further investigations led to the arrest of 32-year-old Malika Scott of Grove, East Bank, Demerara. And now in regional news. Senior United States officials traveled to Venezuela at the weekend for talks with President Nicolas Maduro's government. Reuters news agency reports that the mission was seeking to determine whether Caracas is prepared to distance itself from close ally Russia amid its invasion of Ukraine. According to a person familiar with the matter, the trip, the highest-level U.S. visit to Venezuela in years, came as part of a U.S. effort to isolate Russian President Vladimir Putin. Some analysts also see U.S.-sanctioned Venezuela as a potential alternate source of oil supplies should Washington attempt to restrict Moscow's energy shipments. The source told Reuters on condition of anonymity that U.S. and Venezuelan officials held a round of talks on Saturday but reached no agreement. It was unclear whether a further meeting would be held. The visit, which involved senior White House and State Department officials, was first reported by the New York Times. The White House and State Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Venezuela on February 25th blamed the United States and NATO for the crisis in Ukraine, though it expressed worry over the worsening of the crisis there. Cuba and Nicaragua have also defended Putin's stance on Ukraine. In a March 1st phone call, Putin and Maduro discussed the situation in Ukraine and talked about increasing a strategic partnership between Russia and Venezuela, the Interfax news agency reported, citing the Kremlin. Barbadian consumers will be paying more for petroleum products effective midnight Sunday, March 6th. The expected increase in the retail prices of gasoline, diesel, kerosene, and liquefied petroleum gas (LPG) is in keeping with those for these products on the international market. Gasoline will be sold at $4.13 per liter, an increase of 14 cents, while diesel will rise by 17 cents to cost $3.46 per liter. Kerosene will be $1.80 per liter, and an addition of 22 cents. The adjusted price of the 100-pound cylinder is $159.96. The 25-pound cylinder will cost $45.09. The 22-pound cylinder, $39.85, and $36.22 for the 20-pound cylinder. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, TTPS, is warning that anyone who publishes and distributes and transmit child pornography is liable to a fine of $4,400 and imprisonment for 10 years. This is in response to a video circulating online which allegedly depicts a female minor being sexually assaulted by an adult male while seated in the back seat of a vehicle. Trinidad and Tobago Police appealed to the public to cease and desist from sharing the video clip in question. According to police reports, a report was made to the Police Child Protection Unit by the victim and her father on March 2nd, and the suspect was arrested on the same day. Police say the man has been formally charged with the offense of sexual touching of a child. He appeared before the court and was remanded into custody pending a tracing. And in Antigua, a 38-year-old man is accused of the murder of his personal trainer. Antigua Observer reports that 38-year-old Burl Adolphus Nathaniel Wallace Jr. has been remanded to prison after appearing in the court for the first time. He is accused of murder of personal trainer Christopher Smithers of Friars Hill Development. According to reports, Smithers and Wallace Jr. were involved in an altercation on St. John's Street last Tuesday evening. Mr. Wallace allegedly armed himself with a sharp object and stabbed Smithers. He was then rushed to the Sir Lester Bird Medical Center for emergency treatment, but succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead. Mr. Wallace Jr.'s committal hearing is May 12th. Since the news of his death, many of Smithers' friends, extreme fitness gym mates, and former trainees have paid their respects to the charismatic and energetic man. And now for the international news. Here's the latest bulletin coming from the BBC World Service.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. Ukraine says Russia's idea that Ukrainian civilians should be allowed safe passage via corridors leading to Russia and Belarus is completely immoral. Officials said people trapped in cities under Russian bombardment should be allowed to escape to Ukrainian territory. The deputy mayor of the port of Mariupol, where 2 weekend attempts to evacuate civilians collapsed within minutes, said the city could not organise the rescue operation on territory it did not control. Lise Doucette is our chief international correspondent.
Today again, there will be an effort to allow people from this besieged, encircled city of Mariupol, where people have been living without electricity, without running water, without being able to bury their dead or help their injured. They will try to escape again. The road has been mined, there has been shelling, but the statement from the Russian Defense Ministry this morning blamed the Ukrainians and said the Ukrainians have to accept the rules that were agreed in order to allow civilians to find safety.
More than 1 million people fleeing the war in Ukraine have now sought refuge in neighbouring Poland. The Polish Border Guard Agency says more than 40,000 have arrived in the first 6 hours of Monday alone. Fighting has continued, with suburbs of Kyiv coming under further attack. In Mykolaiv, in southern Ukraine, rocket strikes are reported to have caused fires in residential areas. Filippo Grandi is the head of the UN's refugee agency.
We must not forget that one purpose of the corridors is also to bring supplies to the besieged and bombarded cities. And organizations like mine, but many others in the UN, the Red Cross, have been ready for days now to go with convoys inside those cities.
Investors' uncertainty about the conflict has prompted a sell-off in global stock markets. Shares in Hong Kong and Tokyo closed more than 3% down. The trading week in Europe began with losses on all major indexes. At one point, stocks in Milan fell by 6%. There's been a big jump in the value of wholesale gas in Europe. Theo Leggett is our business correspondent.
What seems to be happening is there's an awful lot of competition for liquid natural gas shipments as people try and stock up in case there's any interruption to gas flows from Russia. Russia accounts for about 40% of Europe's gas, so that's quite significant as well. But we're also seeing a range of commodities go up in price. Remember, a lot of them come from Russia. Aluminium, we get aluminium supplies from Russia. We get supplies of fertilizers from Russia. So all of this coming together is creating a big price crunch.
News from the BBC. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has held talks with the Lithuanian President and Foreign Minister on the situation in Ukraine. He'll later visit Latvia and Estonia during the day. All three Baltic nations are keenly aware of Russia's regional threat. In 1940, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania were annexed by the Soviet Union. They're the only former Soviet republics to have joined NATO. Russia has failed to appear at the International Court of Justice in The Hague, which is considering an emergency ruling requiring Moscow to stop its invasion. The court president announced that Russia would not be participating in the proceedings. Ukraine's representative at the court, Anton Korinovich, denounced Russia's failure to attend.
The fact that Russia's seats are empty speaks loudly. They are not here in this court of law. They are on a battlefield, waging aggressive war against my country. This is how Russia solves disputes. But Ukraine has another position and respects international law and this court of law.
The Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has urged China to end what he described as its tacit political and economic support for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Morrison said the unfolding events there were a moment of choice for Beijing. Speaking in Sydney, Mr. Morrison said no country in the world at the moment would have a greater impact on the Kremlin's violent aggression towards Ukraine than China. One other story, police in Thailand say the Australian cricket star Shane Warne died of natural causes. The 52-year-old was found unresponsive on the resort island of Koh Samui on Friday. A spokesman for the Thai police said the player's family had been informed of the result of a post-mortem and accepted it. Shane Warne is considered one of the greatest Test cricketers of all time. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. The President and the leader of the People's National Congress Reform are identifying conditions for power sharing. The Region 4 chairman is being investigated for a gun-related incident. In regional news, the United States wants to know what is Venezuela's position on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.